And we're back, like we never left. This is episode 145 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your early Sunday evening with me here in New York. But if you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, enjoy it. Haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Spotify or iTunes, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. So today is Russell Crowe's 60th birthday. And I guess if I didn't know, I would have assumed he was a little bit older. It's not that he's been out of the public eye, but he hasn't done what most people would consider great work in a really long time. You maybe almost have to go all the way back to American Gangster, which is a movie that's now 17 years old, to find what you could consider like a prime Russell Crowe performance. And he's been working steadily, and he's been in some good movies, and movies that, if they didn't get great reviews, have high audience scores. Like he has a recent film on Netflix called Sleeping Dogs, where the critics pretty much trashed it, but it has a 93% audience score, which means people are enjoying his work. It's just, once upon a time, the critical reception of his movies, 92%, 88%, like that. So Russell Crowe grew up in New Zealand and moved to Australia. And he isn't an actor who then became a musician, because I remember when he started touring with his band right around the time Gladiator came out, and people were like, oh, just another actor who thinks he can be a musician. He was a musician when he was a kid. And there are pictures of him where he looks like he's maybe 15 in musician garb and giving concerts and so forth. So he was not somebody who just tried to piggyback on, I always wanted to be a musician. He was doing music while he was trying to establish his film career. He was doing both. So the first time I heard of him, he did a movie in the early 90s called Romper Stomper, which I feel as if I saw, this is such a weird memory, but I saw the VCR box for Romper Stomper at the same time that I rented Reservoir Dogs for the first time, which would have been in 1994. And the critical reviews on the VHS box for Romper Stomper were rapturous in praise for the movie and also for this actor named Russell Crowe. And it was my first time seeing a picture of him, and it didn't really make that much of an impression. Like I wasn't, I should rent this movie. But somewhere in my brain, it clicked, the name Russell Crowe. The first Russell Crowe movie that I saw in theaters, I saw two films with Russell Crowe in theaters in 1995. One was Virtuosity with Denzel Washington, science fiction film. It's not very good. The premise was great. The movie doesn't quite work. Denzel plays a futuristic cop who has kind of committed a crime. It was a mistake and he shot somebody accidentally. I don't really believe the world of the story that he would end up going to prison for it, but whatever. And Russell plays, it's almost a little bit of a Matrix concept. Years before the Matrix, he plays a computer program who looks human, but he's a computer program who has committed all kinds of crimes. He's essentially a serial killer. I think his name is Sid 6.7. He's a serial killer who is basically a computer program, and Denzel has to stop him. It's not good. It's not good. If you want to see it for Denzel or Russell Completus, there's some interesting special effects. Not really very good. But the other film he did in 1995, Sam Raimi, years before doing the Spider-Man trilogy, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, Sam Raimi made a Western called The Quick and the Dead. And I've often talked of movies that have casts that you can't believe they got all of these people in one movie. Well, Quick and the Dead, the nominal star is Sharon Stone. I shouldn't say nominal star, she is the star. But backing up Sharon Stone in supporting roles or smaller roles, you have terrific genre actors like Lance Henriksen and Keith David. And you have absolute home run hitters like Gene Hackman, like a very young Leonardo DiCaprio. And Russell steals the movie. He plays a character called Preacher. And when I tell you there's nothing on the page, if you read that script, there is nothing memorable about the character of Preacher. But Russell Crowe makes the character memorable just by virtue of his quite astonishing acting ability, his ability to act with his body, act with his eyes, with that incredible speaking voice. He brings every tool in his arsenal to this throwaway role. I barely remember Sharon in this film. I remember Hackman as Herod and Leonardo, who looks like a kid. This is just after What's Eating Gilbert Grape. And right around the time they did Basketball Diaries with Mark Wahlberg. But Leo looks so young in this movie. Like it's only a couple of years before Titanic, but it looks like 5 years before Titanic. He looks like he's about 15 in this film. The movie is good. It's a good Western. Sharon is playing a variation on the Man with No Name of the Clint Eastwood Westerns of the 60s. And Sam Raimi was deliberately echoing what Sergio Leone did as far as some weird camera angles and some creative editing and some fun, holy shit shots of somebody gets shot through the head and Raimi has his camera in the hole in the person's head. That's something you're not going to see again. I had never seen that one before. But watching that movie, watching Russell in that film, and sometimes you'll see an actor or an actress in a role. This is something that I will say that I have done. And even if you don't love the movie, you say to yourself, this is a future star. There is nothing accidental about this actor in this performance. And I felt the same way when I watched Man in the Moon, not Man on the Moon with Jim Carrey. Man in the Moon, a drama starring Sam Waterston, I think Tess Harper, but a very young Reese Witherspoon. It was Reese's film debut. And I watched that movie, I was about 18, and I immediately said, she's going to be a star. Reese Witherspoon was radiating movie star charisma. She's like 14 or 15. There was no way she was not going to be a star. Watching Russell Crowe in The Quick and the Dead, I had the same reaction. I said, this guy is going up. Because I immediately saw this is a bullshit nothing part, and he's why you're watching this movie. Every minute he's on screen, he is riveting. Your eyes are drawn to him. Again, that undefinable quality called screen presence. Gene Hackman has legendary screen presence. When Russell is on screen with Gene Hackman, we see Russell. Not really worried about Gene. Even though it's a kind of a dominant, if anything, he plays a character like Sheriff Bill Daggett from Unforgiven, his Oscar-winning role. The guy he plays in Quick and the Dead is even worse than Sheriff Bill Daggett. That's really saying something. This isn't fair. I was building a house. Great last line in movies. Gene Hackman upset that Clint Eastwood, what are you shooting me for? I was building a house. As if one has anything to do with the other. This isn't right. Going like this. I was building a house. But Russell, his work, not so much in virtuosity, but his work in Quick and the Dead definitely caught the attention of bigwigs and the big shots and the movers and shakers in Hollywood who saw what I saw. Maybe they would have phrased it differently. This was a nothing part. This guy made it sing. We want to work with him. And Russell's next big movie was L.A. Confidential. L.A. Confidential is so good, even though Kevin Spacey is in it. I realize that for certain people, Kevin Spacey is a no-go at this point. I'm not making any judgment. Spacey was a brilliant actor. And L.A. Confidential is a phenomenal film. The 90s, for me, the single greatest decade in the history of Hollywood. People can argue this, that it's actually the 70s. I don't have a problem with that argument. I'll take anyone on in that argument, and I'll probably win. But L.A. Confidential is a great film. And I love Titanic, and I was happy that Titanic won Best Picture that year, and that James Cameron took Best Director. But I would have had no problem if L.A. Confidential took the big awards. That's not the kind of movie that you would think would have an amazing rewatchability factor. And I saw L.A. Confidential 2 times in theaters. And both times, I was fucking dazzled. All the performances are great. From Spacey, James Cromwell, Guy Pearce, great. as Ed Exley. We're not really sure. Is he a kind of a heel pretending to be a good guy, or is he genuinely a good guy? Or is he just somebody who knows how to work the angles to make himself look a good guy? There is so much, not confusion, but so much gray area in the movie LA Confidential. And Russell really brings it. Kim Basinger winning an Oscar for supporting actress. A now kind of unfortunate moment when she won the award and her then husband, Alec Baldwin, cheering and going berserk in his seat. A very wholesome moment at the time, because there's no way he was pretending. He was fucking crazy. I don't think he thought she had a chance to win. But she's marvelous in that film. Everyone's great. And Curtis Hanson's direction, fantastic. So LA Confidential was a huge hit, a lot of Oscar nominations. And Russell from there went on to, he did the movie The Insider, which was the first of his 3 consecutive Best Actor Oscar nominations. And The Insider was based on a true story of a cigarette industry whistleblower. There's a lot of talk, we do whistleblowers, a government whistleblower. Oh, he's going to blow the whistle. Well, Jeffrey Wigand really was a whistleblower. He knew that the tobacco companies were putting were putting substances into their product to get people hooked, that's okay, I guess. But putting substances into products that you know are going to kill them and then pretending we don't know anything about it, I got a problem with that. So the real Jeff Wiggin went forward, was a whistleblower, and the movie The Insider was directed by Michael Mann, who just did the Ferrari movie, a great filmmaker. Heat with, Al Pacino and Bobby D, one of the all-timers, Ali with Will Smith. Don't love that movie, but it's very well done. And The Insider got a ton of acclaim, didn't win any of the big awards that year. That was the year of American Beauty. It's okay, take it or leave it. But what Russell does, and this would be an interesting case study, just to show how versatile and how resourceful. I would say that although he's more of a leading man looking guy, if you ask me who is the most resourceful actor to come on the scene in the last 30, 35 years, I will say Russell Crowe. And if you say, who is the most resourceful actor of the last 50 years, I'm always going to answer Dustin Hoffman. Russell Crowe is Dustin Hoffman in a leading man's body and a leading man's stature and the intensity. So Russell Crowe, 3 consecutive Best Actor nominations. The Insider, playing a highly intelligent, not volatile, a highly intelligent cigarette industry whistleblower, a real guy who comes forward, and it is a quiet, interior, focused performance, but it feels authentic. It does not feel like a movie star playing a part. It feels like he managed to mimic the real guy. He won his Oscar for his next big movie, which was Gladiator. Now, I love Gladiator. 2000 was a kind of a weird year for movies because Julia Roberts, a great movie star. Love Julia Roberts. Don't love her acting in almost every movie she's in, even ones I like. You ask me what's Julia Roberts' best film performance, I'm going to say Leave the World Behind. She was phenomenal in that movie because she did something completely different. She didn't fall back on any of her usual tricks and her usual acting style. She said, I'm going to do something different here. I'm going to give a different performance. I am going to have zero movie star vibes coming off of me, and I'm just going to do the best I can. And she's fantastic in Leave the World Behind. But she ended up winning Oscar for Erin Brockovich. And Russell won for Gladiator that year. And I really like the movie, but that's not my favorite Russell Crowe performance. I was happy when he won, don't get me wrong. Tom Hanks for Castaway probably could have gotten that award. I feel like Hanks did more with his role, but it's neither here nor there. And in the 3rd consecutive Best Actor nomination, which many people feel the Oscar, if you were going to flip the years, give Tom Hanks the award for Castaway and give Russell Crowe the award for A Beautiful Mind, because he really dialed it in for that film. There are people who would argue that is his finest piece of film acting. All of the shades of John Nash, the Nobel Prize winning mathematician who was mentally ill. And I can't even imagine what the real John Nash went through. But Russell is so good. It's such a beautiful performance. Again, for an actor who has the ability with the intensity and a kind of intimidating, menacing screen presence in a lot of movies. He doesn't have any of that in A Beautiful Mind. It's a great performance and a very good movie. That's a movie that won a lot of the major hardware. I had no problem with it. I've seen A Beautiful Mind 5 or 6 times. I love Christopher Plummer as a doctor who really he's not a particularly good character, not a really nice guy. Anytime you say, well, we have to help him, we're going to give him insulin shock therapy. Hey, fuck you. Let him be what he is. Insulin shock therapy? Get the fuck out of here. The fact that that was used for severe schizophrenia is unbelievable, that anybody thought that was a good idea. But I guess it's better than drilling holes in people's heads, right? Or giving them lobotomies. Progress. My favorite movie and performance by Russell Crowe, and honestly, it's not even close. Master and Commander. The extraordinary Peter Weir, who had done The Truman Show, Picnic at Hanging Rock, Gallipoli, Year of Living Dangerously. Peter Weir is somebody I'm going to probably have to talk about. I shouldn't say have to. I should look forward to. Because Peter Weir is one of those guys who may not have the filmography of the Hitchcocks, Spielbergs, Scorseses, Kubricks. But Peter Weir is every bit as talented and has been every bit the master filmmaker of anyone you can mention that I haven't. He is that good. Master and Commander, it's one of the best films of the last 25 years. It's that good. And there are a lot of people who slept on it, who haven't seen it. It doesn't look interesting. It didn't look interesting to me either. When it came out, I went to the movies a couple of times during that time frame when Master and Commander was out, and I just, doesn't look that good. It looks like it's going to be boring. It's just men at sea in the late 19th century. Not interesting. Even though I was a big fan of Gladiator, of A Beautiful Mind, and of Peter Weir. The Truman Show is a fucking masterpiece. This movie and The Truman Show, 1 and 1A. I would say culturally, historically, The Truman Show is more important. But I want to pinpoint something else. There was a magazine article, I don't know if it was Esquire, but it was not, I don't think it was specifically a movie magazine like a Film Comment or an American Film or an American Cinematographer. But it was a magazine article from a number of years ago discussing the way that movie audiences had changed and how, in this instance, the wrong movie became iconic and legendary and became a franchise. And the article got into the fact that Peter Weir's Master and Commander, which got spectacular critical reviews. I think it was 11 Oscar nominations. It might have been more or less, but it was in the ballpark of that. Spectacular critical reviews. Pirates of the Caribbean, Johnny Depp, Orlando Bloom, Keira Knightley, Jeffrey Rush, Oscar winner himself. They came out not at the same time, but in the same year. And this particular article argues this is where we saw for sure that audiences had been dumbed down. Because if there was any justice, if there was any cinematic justice, not that Pirates of the Caribbean shouldn't have been a hit. It's fun. It's a good movie. Depp is incredible. But Depp got an Oscar nomination and Russell didn't. That is outrageous. Sorry, Johnny. I love you. You're fucking great. Great career. But give me a fucking break. Captain Jack Sparrow. I got a jar of dirt. I got a jar of dirt. That's a movie star performance. He's got a jar of dirt. Big fucking deal. But the article kind of ruminates and sadly points out that Master and Commander, there was a series of books about this Captain Jack Aubrey who Russell plays in the film. And because the movie didn't do that well at the box office, I don't even think it turned a profit. And it was a massive scaled production. They gave Weir pretty much carte blanche to do what he wanted, and he fucking delivered it in every possible way, from the casting to the effects work a little bit, the practical effects during production. But this article says it's just unfortunate. We got a series of Pirates of the Caribbean movies when there was an alternate run out, if we reboot The Matrix, where we got at least 2 or 3 Jack Aubrey novels turned into movies. And he basically said that Master and Commander maybe was the best movie he had ever seen. I don't know that I would go that far. The film gets so many things right and so many details about life at sea that, again, if you had asked me about it before seeing the movie, I would not have said, oh, that sounds really interesting. But in this movie, which is set late 19th century, we're on a British naval vessel. Something I never thought about it. People are at sea for 6 months. What do they do for food? What do they eat? We see tons of grain, and we see livestock. There's chickens and turkeys and other little animals running around. That's the fucking food. It's not something I would have ever thought about. But we see how the cooks prepare meals for the crew, for the captain. He gets special rations. And there's similar discussions in this movie as Pirates of the Caribbean. Extra rations of rum for the men that alerted us as to the danger in Master and Commander. And the idea of not so much mutiny, but people abusing crewmates who they think are bad luck. Russell is extraordinary as Captain Jack Aubrey. And Paul Bettany, how he didn't get a supporting actor nomination as the Dr. Stephen Maturin, who is, I won't even say they're frenemies. They're best friends, but they argue vociferously over and over, one argument after another. They're arguing about philosophies of life, thinking they're arguing about ships and about naval warfare, but they're actually arguing about life. And every scene between the two guys, sometimes they argue while playing musical instruments. It is, for me, a top 10 greatest films I've ever seen. That's how good Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World is. Russell Crowe's finest film acting. I encourage you to seek it out. He actually had a kind of funny exchange a couple of years ago with a young person on Twitter who made a comment about how they loved Russell as an actor, a big fan, but I was bored. And Russell Crowe basically said, it's a problem. I hate to be an old head, but the problem is that you were looking down at your phone. You got to be able to give these movies full attention, pretty much telling a kid, I'm sorry, get the fuck out of here. Words to that effect. But that is an incredible movie, and it's unfortunate it didn't do better at the box office, so they could have made another movie because I think Peter Weir was down, and certainly Russell would have wanted to reprise that extraordinary role, that amazing role of Captain Jack Aubrey. So he did a number of other very solid movies. Cinderella Man, which came out the next year about the famous boxer Jim Braddock, who's, not surprisingly, his nickname was the Cinderella Man. He basically was a middleweight, an overblown middleweight who ended up heavyweight champion of the world. It's a good movie. It's not great. Paul Giamatti is great in it, and Russell is terrific. He looks the part. Didn't love it. At the time, people said this is basically Seabiscuit just with a boxer instead of a horse, because the two movies were promoted in an almost identical way. When the country was down, Seabiscuit gave us something to cheer about. When the United States was at its knees, Jim Braddock made them cheer. Same idea. Now, I only recently saw the Western, it was a remake, basically, that Russell did with Christian Bale in the mid-2000s called 3:10 to Yuma. It's very good. That's one I slept on. It's so weird because I am a Western movie scholar. There's really no excuse for me not having seen that movie until, I don't know, a year and a half ago, but I hadn't seen it. And not surprisingly, the film is terrific. Russell's great. He's kind of an antagonistic character, but not really. Like, we sort of understand him even if he does villainous things. And Christian Bale is a good guy who does some villainous things. It's a very interesting kind of dynamic between the two of them. What I would say is the last great film that Russell was star, American Gangster, with Denzel, and the story of the famous gangster, Frank Lucas. Now, I don't know, I didn't read up on the actual history, so I apologize. I don't know if Frank Lucas was quite as brutal and as much of a stone-cold assassin type personality as he is presented in this movie. But I know that what Russell does is great film acting. Again, doing a different kind of character, playing a cop who is more of an intellectual, not a, leading with his fists kind of a performance, or the real guy, Richie Roberts. Movie is terrific. And, gave birth to one of my favorite, and a lot of people, Denzel phrase, often he ends up killing a person, where he'll look at somebody with that classic Denzel smile. My man. That became a thing at Bev's Gym, where we'd say, my man, hey, don't pull a gun on me, please. There's an incredible scene with Idris Elba where you just know that some violence is about to occur. And Idris Elba is a bigger man than Denzel. And he tries to kind of intimidate him or stare him down. Not advisable, not a good idea, at least not in the world of that film. So as I say, unfortunately, he made a lot of movies, Russell, that weren't worthy, in my opinion, of his time or talent. I didn't think the Les Mis movie with Hugh Jackman, I didn't think it was that good. And did they really need to make another Les Mis movie? The one in the late 90s I thought was pretty good with Liam Neeson and Jeffrey Rush, among others. The film he did with Mark Wahlberg, Broken City, about 15 years ago, not good. And State of Play, his performance, that was with Ben Affleck, it was kind of a political thriller type. Russell's performance is terrific, but I feel like the movie is just okay. And Body of Lies with DiCaprio, also just okay. Nothing special. I like what Russell did in Man of Steel with Henry Cavill. I thought he added gravitas. He added weight just by playing Jor-El. And if we're being honest, he did a lot better job as Jor-El. He had more to work with. But he was a better Jor-El than Brando. And I love Brando. Brando's 100th birthday would have been a couple of days ago. But Brando kind of phoned it in Superman. And you can see Russell trying and the gears turning. And his scenes with Henry Cavill, to me, are really good. And in the other, the scenes that he has with Michael Shannon as Zod, excellent. But he didn't just show up and get a paycheck. You can see him focused, intense, and trying to make the most out of what could easily be, as I like to say, a throwaway role. So, I should point out the other movie that Russell was in, which is very, very good. The film he did with Ryan Gosling, I guess it was 10 years ago? I don't think it was quite 10 years ago. The Nice Guys. A kind of a buddy action comedy period piece where you see that Russell, for all of the intensity and the kind of fearsome turns that he's given, where we're scared of his character, he's actually got great comic timing. He's another guy who is magic. Whatever you want him to do in the right role, he can do it. He can play serious, he can play horror, he can play psycho, and he can make us laugh. He is just a multi-talented film actor. And I'm not really familiar with his music, but people who are say he's a damn good musician. In terms of the kind of actors who also are musicians, I feel like he's considered to be slightly better than Keanu, who is also in his own right a very talented musician. I mean, we know he's a better actor than Keanu, but Keanu has been a bigger movie star, and there is something to be said for having the eye for the kind of material that would work. Nobody knew that the John Wick series was going to be what it was, and nobody knew that The Matrix, maybe it would have just been a one-off, although people who read that script were thinking this is going to be a franchise. But still, eye for material, there is something to be said for that. And Russell was offered a lot of great projects in that late 90s through mid-2000s and even to the late 2000s stretch. And then sometimes you kind of age out of certain roles, or maybe you turn down a project that would have been great, could have been potentially an Oscar winner. But I would say that, and he did the movie The Pope's Exorcist last year. It's not that good. Poker Face. There are a lot of movies that he's made, which I hate to say are beneath his talents, but they're kind of beneath his talents. That movie he did in 2020, Unhinged, I mean, it was kind of entertaining. It's basically a movie about a road rage situation where a guy goes completely off the rails because of one road rage incident. But obviously we're led to believe this guy is completely fucked up. He is scary as hell in that movie. Great performance. Not a good movie, but great film acting within the confines of what amounts to almost a horror film, because his character it kind of almost turns into a serial killer. He just doesn't give a fuck. But a happy birthday to, I believe, the most talented, resourceful actor of his generation. A happy 60th to Oscar winner Russell Crowe. And I hope he gets more great roles that could potentially be Oscar worthy in the future, because he certainly still has the talent to give those kinds of performances and be a second time or third time Oscar winner. He just needs the right material. With that, we've reached the end of episode 145 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for joining me on this now Sunday evening. If you caught this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, share, comment, turn on those notifications. Or if you caught this episode on the audio platforms such as Spotify or iTunes, click like, subscribe, share, turn on those notifications. I'll be back with episode 146 real soon. Until then, peace out.